You think explaining yourself makes you look serious. It usually reveals that you still need permission. Every time you defend your ambition to people who have never built what you are trying to build, you give them a vote they did not earn. You make their understanding a condition of your movement. Then you call the delay patience. You tell yourself that one more conversation will make your family understand. One more explanation will make your friends respect the plan. One more detailed argument will finally prove that you are not delusional. But men who are building power do not spend their early years defending invisible futures. They protect the plan. They build the evidence. They let results update the room. And there is a psychological reason this matters. In 4 experiments involving identity-related goals, psychologist Peter Gollwitzer and his colleagues found that when other people noticed a person's intentions, that recognition could create a premature feeling of already possessing the desired identity. Among strongly committed participants, publicly recognized intentions were sometimes followed by less intense action. The study does not prove that every public goal will fail. It reveals something narrower and more dangerous. Talking can sometimes give you part of the emotional reward before you have earned the result. You describe the business and briefly feel like an entrepreneur. You announce the transformation and briefly feel disciplined. You defend the future and briefly feel as if you have already entered it. But nothing has been built. The question is not whether they understand you. The question is why you still need them to. And before this is over, you will understand why explaining more often lowers respect, why familiar people keep judging you through your past, how silence can become either strategy or cowardice, and the 4 rules that allow a man to execute privately without becoming isolated, delusional, or weak. Because explanation is not always communication. Sometimes it is dependency with better vocabulary. Niccolo Machiavelli understood what it meant to lose access to the room. He served the Florentine Republic as a secretary and diplomat. When the Medici returned to power, he lost his position, was imprisoned, and was pushed outside the political world where he had built his experience. During that exclusion, he produced the work that became The Prince. He had lost office, access, and direct influence. But he had not lost the ability to observe reality. He converted rejection into analysis and exile into intellectual proof. The prince did not immediately restore his career. That is what makes the lesson colder. Machiavelli built an asset that survived the men who had excluded him. That is power in its earliest form, not applause, not permission. An asset that remains valuable even when the room refuses to recognize you. Machiavelli asked what most men avoid asking. Not what should people reward, but what do people actually respond to? Human beings respond to what they can see. They trust patterns more than promises. They revise judgment slowly. They rarely grant authority to a man simply because he believes he deserves it. This is where the explanation trap begins. You believe misunderstanding is an information problem, so you provide more information. You explain the market, the plan, the reasons, the timing, and why this attempt will be different from the last one. But after the second or third conversation, information is no longer the real issue. You are trying to remove the emotional discomfort of being doubted. You want reassurance before proof exists. You want other people to emotionally authorize a future they cannot yet see. Each new explanation makes their approval more important. The more energy you invest in convincing them, the more painful it becomes when they remain unconvinced. You have made them part of the project, not as builders, but as judges. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand." He also wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are." He was writing about political reputation, but the mechanism applies to private ambition. People do not live inside your intentions. They do not experience the hours you imagine you will work. They do not see the discipline you plan to develop. They see current evidence, your past behavior, your unfinished projects, your financial position, your habits under pressure. You are asking them to judge the hidden substance you believe exists inside you. They are judging what has become visible. That may not be fair. It is still reality. You say, I know what I am capable of. They remember what you completed. You say, this time is different. They remember every previous time you said that. You say, you do not understand the vision. They see that the vision has not yet survived contact with reality. Sometimes their doubt is disrespect. Sometimes it is jealousy. Some people benefit from your weakness because your growth would disturb the position they hold over you. But sometimes they are simply using the evidence available to them. That distinction matters. If you treat every doubt as hatred, you become paranoid. If you treat every doubt as a final verdict, you become obedient. The strategic response is neither rage nor submission. It is construction. Explanation cannot force another person to experience a future that does not yet exist. Evidence can. You are not a misunderstood ruler speaking to a blind population. You are an unproven builder asking spectators to see a structure before the foundation is visible. Stop demanding vision from spectators. Build the foundation. If this exposes a habit you recognize in yourself, subscribe now. This channel is not built to comfort the man waiting to be understood. It is built for the man ready to become measurable. The hardest resistance rarely comes from strangers. It comes from people who remember you before you began changing. Your family does not meet you for the first time today. Your old friends do not evaluate you without context. They carry a historical model of you. They remember the year you were inconsistent, the plan you abandoned, the discipline that lasted 9 days, the money you wasted, the promise you made and quietly stopped mentioning. The weaker identity you are trying to leave behind still exists in their memory. Machiavelli observed, men are attracted more by the present than by the past. But before the present becomes strong enough to replace the past controls perception. When you try to become someone new, you are asking your environment to replace an established model with an untested one. People rarely do that because of a speech. They do it after repeated contradiction. You say you are disciplined. They remain skeptical. You wake early for 3 days. Nothing changes. You remain consistent for 3 months. They notice. You build for 1 year. They revise the model. Reputation is not changed by intensity. It is changed by accumulated contradiction. Your new behavior must contradict the old identity for long enough that the old interpretation becomes expensive to maintain. This is where many men fail. They want recognition for beginning. But beginning creates no obligation for anyone to update his judgment. You joined the gym. You have not transformed your body. You bought the course. You have not acquired the skill. You started the channel. You have not built an audience. You registered the business. You have not created value. A decision changes your internal direction. A pattern changes your external reputation. Until there is a pattern, explanation increases pressure on an identity that is still fragile. Praise enters. Criticism enters. Mockery enters. Expectations enter. Now the go must survive reality and the reactions of everyone you informed. That is unnecessary exposure. Weak plans need protection, not because criticism is always wrong, but because an unfinished identity reacts strongly to social pressure. One compliment can make you complacent. One insult can make you defensive. One skeptical question can send you back into explanation. You start adjusting the plan to reduce criticism instead of improving the result. You begin choosing actions that look convincing rather than actions that generate evidence. Your attention shifts from the work to the audience watching the work. That is how an ambition becomes socially managed before it becomes operationally real. The more fragile the goal, the more dangerous premature attention becomes. Praise can weaken you because it gives you recognition without proof. Mockery can weaken you because it makes the project feel like a public test of your identity. Doubt can weaken you because every difficult day begins to feel like confirmation that the critics were right. Now you are no longer solving the actual problem. You are managing the emotional meaning of the problem. You are not studying the market. You are trying to avoid looking foolish. You are not improving the product. You are trying to create an update impressive enough to silence the room. You are not building discipline. You are performing discipline for witnesses. This is why unfinished goals need controlled exposure, not complete secrecy. Controlled exposure. A qualified mentor may need to see the plan. A business partner affected by the decision may need full information. A spouse carrying financial risk deserves honesty. A customer can give you evidence. A specialist can expose a flaw before the flaw becomes expensive. But the random doubter does not need a permanent seat inside your strategy. Stop asking people to forget your past because of your words. Create a present strong enough to overrule it. But repeated explanation carries another cost. It does not merely fail to persuade. It can lower your status in the eyes of the listener. A clear explanation can demonstrate intelligence. Repeated explanation often demonstrates dependence. The first statement communicates a decision. The second clarifies a misunderstanding. The fifth asks for agreement. The 10th reveals that the listener's reaction still has power over you. Machiavelli warned that a ruler becomes contemptible when he appears fickle, mean-spirited, irresolute. His recommendation was to show through action greatness, courage, gravity, and fortitude. This does not mean pretending to possess certainty you do not have. That would be theater. It means refusing to negotiate an identity you have already chosen to test through action. Compare two men. The first announces a business idea. His family questions it, so he produces more arguments. His friends mock it, so he sends them articles. Someone identifies a risk, so he becomes defensive. He updates everyone about suppliers, branding, revenue, future employees, and the life he will have when it works. Months pass. The idea becomes socially familiar before it becomes economically real. Everyone knows the plan. Nobody can see the product. The second man studies the same opportunity. He asks qualified people specific questions. He tests demand. He builds a prototype. He gets rejected. He adjusts. He returns with a paying customer. The first man tried to control perception with words. The second man changed reality and allowed perception to follow. The first man wanted the room to confirm his identity before the market had tested his value. The second man allowed rejection to improve the mechanism. One treated criticism as a threat to his image. The other treated criticism as information about the work. James Dyson understood this distinction. Frustrated by the loss of suction in conventional vacuum cleaners, he built an early cyclone prototype, then spent years producing 5,127 prototypes. Major manufacturers rejected the design. His first evidence was not an inspiring explanation. It was a working mechanism. The product eventually reached the market, first through Japan and later through Dyson's own company. Look at what happened. The manufacturers had authority. They had distribution. They had existing products. They had every reason to believe. Their judgment mattered more than the judgment of one frustrated inventor. Dyson could have spent those years demanding that they understand his vision. He could have built his identity around their rejection. He could have treated every refusal as proof that the system was corrupt and every criticism as evidence that the industry feared him. But resentment would not have improved suction. Explanation would not have fixed the machine. Only another prototype could expose the next weakness. Only another test could create better evidence. Rejection remained opinion until the product became evidence. Dyson did not win because every critic became supportive. He won because their support stopped being necessary. This is the difference between argument and leverage. Argument asks another person to change his mind. Leverage changes the cost of keeping the old opinion. Machiavelli wrote, "One judges by the result." The principle is not that any method becomes acceptable if you win. The principle is that intentions do not control public judgment as strongly as visible consequences do. You can be sincere and still appear unserious. You can be talented and still appear unproven. You can be correct and still possess no influence. Status follows signals other people can observe and verify. Overexplaining tries to manufacture the signal before constructing the substance. The words are carrying weight that only results can hold. Every unnecessary defense tells the listener that your certainty still depends on his agreement. The self-directed man does not need to dominate the conversation. He needs to dominate his own execution. But this creates a new danger. Silence can look like power while protecting nothing. A man can stop explaining, withdraw from criticism, call himself private, and quietly use secrecy to hide the fact that no work is being done. That is not strategy. That is fear wearing black clothing. Strategic silence has structure. Cowardly silence has avoidance. Strategic silence protects unfinished work. Cowardly silence hides non-existent work. Strategic silence refuses unnecessary debate. Cowardly silence refuses necessary confrontation. Strategic silence seeks feedback from people qualified to improve the plan. Cowardly silence rejects feedback because the ego cannot tolerate correction. Strategic silence communicates a decision without pleading. Cowardly silence expects other people to read your mind. Machiavelli wrote in The Art of War, "Good order makes men bold, confusion makes them cowardly." He was writing about military discipline, but the principle applies to ambition. Without order, silence becomes confusion. You stop explaining the plan, but you also stop measuring it. You stop seeking approval, but you also stop seeking expertise. You stop announcing deadlines, but you also stop respecting deadlines. You tell yourself that you are moving in private. In reality, you have removed witnesses because you want the freedom to disappear when the work becomes uncomfortable. That is not sovereignty. That is retreat without accountability. Strategic silence must survive 4 tests. First, has the decision actually been made? Before a decision, discussion can improve judgment. After a decision, endless debate often becomes emotional avoidance. A man who has chosen his direction does not reopen the entire question every time someone disapproves. Second, does the person questioning you possess relevant knowledge, responsibility, or risk? A business partner deserves information. A spouse affected by a financial decision deserves information. A mentor with real experience may deserve the full plan. A random doubter does not deserve a permanent seat in the strategy room. Third, are you speaking to obtain intelligence or emotional relief? Intelligence improves the decision. Emotional relief makes the decision easier to tolerate for a few hours. The difference is visible in the questions you ask. A man seeking intelligence asks, "What assumption am I missing?" A man seeking emotional relief asks, "Do you think I can do it?" One question strengthens execution, the other transfers emotional authority. Fourth, is silence protecting the work or protecting you from accountability? Two men can say, "I am building quietly." One has deadlines, a scorecard, measurable output, and qualified feedback. The other has no output, no schedule, and no date when reality will judge the plan. The first man is protecting the work. The second man is protecting the fantasy. The doctrine is not never speak. That would be childish. The doctrine is this: do not convert every private ambition into a public negotiation. Explain when explanation serves coordination. Speak when another person carries legitimate consequences. Ask questions when knowledge can improve the plan. State boundaries when silence would create confusion. But when the only purpose of speaking is to make an unqualified person emotionally approve of your direction, close your mouth, then return to the work. Strategic silence is not the absence of communication. It is control over audience, timing, purpose, and exposure. You are not becoming secretive, you are becoming selective. But selection alone is not enough. You need rules strong enough to stop you from returning to explanation the moment doubt becomes uncomfortable. The first rule is simple: announce decisions, not fantasies. A fantasy describes what you may do. A decision has already changed your schedule, resources, and behavior. Do not announce that you are going to become a writer. Write. Do not announce that you are building a business. Test an offer. Do not announce that you are becoming disciplined. Produce 30 consecutive days of recorded action. Speak after commitment has created cost. A decision that changes nothing is still a preference. Machiavelli used the word virtue to describe capacity, initiative, judgment, adaptability, and the ability to act under changing circumstances. Virtue is not what a man intends to become. It is what he can effectively do. Private ambition is intention. Executed capacity is power. Do not claim the identity before your behavior has begun paying its price. The second rule is this: explain once, not repeatedly. A clear statement is communication. Repeated defense is dependency. Say, "This is the direction I have chosen. I understand that you disagree." Then stop. Do not turn your life into a courtroom where you must repeatedly prove your right to act. Do not answer the same objection in 12 different forms. Do not assume that better wording will overcome different incentives, values, fears, or standards of evidence. Some people understand your explanation and still disagree. Some understand and remain unconvinced. Some lack the experience required to evaluate the plan. Some are correct about risks you do not want to face. Your task is not to force agreement. Your task is to separate useful information from emotion or resistance. This is where the fox and the lion matter. Machiavelli wrote that the lion cannot protect itself from traps, while the fox cannot protect itself from wolves. The fox represents discernment. Can you detect whether a criticism contains intelligence? The lion represents firmness. Can you continue after the criticism has been evaluated? A weak man rejects every warning. A dependent man obeys every warning. A strategic man examines the warning, adjusts when necessary, and then acts. Clarify once. Evaluate honestly. Do not plead. The third rule is to protect goals until they possess evidence. Early goals are vulnerable, not sacred. Vulnerable. They may contain bad assumptions. Your skill may still be weak. Your first attempt may be embarrassing. Your identity may still depend too heavily on how people react. Premature exposure introduces noise before the signal is strong. This is why unfinished work needs protection, not forever, until it can survive inspection. The researcher does not publish a conclusion before collecting evidence. The engineer does not market a machine that has not been tested. The builder does not invite the public to judge a foundation as if it were a completed structure. Protecting the go means controlling the amount of social reward and social pressure surrounding it. Share the plan with people who can improve execution. Do not share it merely to experience the feeling of importance. Remember the research on identity-related goals. Public recognition can sometimes make an identity feel partially complete before the behavior is complete. The answer is not absolute secrecy. The answer is to attach the goal to a specific action, not "I will build a channel." Instead, when it is 7 in the evening on Monday, I write the first 500 words. Not "I will become financially disciplined." Instead, when income arrives, the transfer happens before discretionary spending. Not "I will stop seeking approval." Instead, when someone questions the goal, I will answer once, record any useful objection, and return to the next scheduled action. Protect the goal by attaching it to behavior, not identity performance. The fourth rule is to replace verbal updates with visible milestones. Do not tell people the project is progressing. Produce the prototype. Do not tell people your discipline is improving. Show the completed month. Do not explain that your skill is becoming valuable. Earn the first payment. Do not argue that the strategy is working. Record the result. Machiavelli repeatedly distrusted borrowed power. In The Prince, he argued that a ruler needed his own forces rather than depending entirely on the forces of others. The original meaning concerned armies and political survival. The personal lesson is narrower. Belief borrowed from other people is unstable. Proof generated by your own action is harder to remove. A completed article is your own force. A launched product is your own force. A client result is your own force. A month of savings is your own force. A working portfolio is your own force. A published video is your own force. A rejection survived without abandoning the plan is your own force. Every milestone performs two functions. Externally, it changes how other people can reasonably evaluate you. Internally, it reduces your dependence on their evaluation. This is how confidence becomes structural. Not because you repeat that you believe in yourself, because you have evidence that you can command yourself. Stop updating people on intention. Let completed evidence carry the message. But principles remain philosophy until behavior is tested. So for the next 30 days, remove the emotional drug of explanation and discover what remains when nobody is allowed to reward the announcement. For 30 days, do not announce new goals. Write them privately. Convert each goal into a measurable weekly output. Not work on the business. Send 10 qualified offers. Not become a writer. Complete one publishable essay. Not improve my finances. Record every expense and save a defined amount. The goal must leave residue. Something must exist at the end of the week that did not exist at the beginning. Do not repeatedly defend the direction. You may explain a decision once to people legitimately affected by it. After that, stop entering the same trial. Use one sentence. I understand your concern. I am testing the decision through action. Then move. Produce one measurable output every week. 4 weeks, 4 pieces of evidence. Small enough to complete, real enough to evaluate. The purpose is not dramatic transformation. The purpose is to teach your nervous system that doubt does not cancel action. Record actions privately. Keep a scorecard. Hours practiced, offers sent, pages written, money saved, applications submitted, videos published. Do not record how inspired you felt. Record what happened. Machiavelli wrote in the Discourses, "Men never behave well unless compelled." The personal application is not that human beings are naturally evil. It is that intention without constraint is weak. Your calendar must compel you. Your environment must reduce escape. Your rules must remain active when emotion disappears. Self-command is not a mood. It is an internal government. At the end of 30 days, share completed evidence, not emotional promises. Do not use strategic silence to hide information from business partners. Do not conceal financial commitments that affect a household. Do not avoid qualified feedback. Do not use privacy to hide dishonesty, risk, or failure from people who carry legitimate consequences. This challenge removes unnecessary explanation. It does not remove responsibility. At the end of the month, ask yourself what happened when the audience disappeared. How much energy returned when you stopped defending yourself? How many conversations were actually necessary? Which criticisms contained useful intelligence? Where were you using secrecy to hide inaction? What did you build when nobody was allowed to reward your intention? The answer will reveal whether you wanted the future or merely wanted recognition for wanting it. But there is one final trap. What happens when the results arrive? Many men stop explaining only to begin performing. They become quieter, they work, they produce. But internally the audience remains. They imagine the family member finally admitting he was wrong, the friend becoming jealous, the room becoming silent when they enter, the people who ignored them suddenly asking for access. This can create action, but it does not create sovereignty, because the doubters still determine the meaning of success. You are still building toward their face, their regret, their apology, their recognition. You stopped asking permission verbally. Psychologically, they still authorize the victory. Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved." The original passage concerned rulers maintaining obedience. It is not advice to intimidate family, friends, or colleagues. Machiavelli also warned that a ruler must avoid hatred. The useful lesson is structural. Affection is conditional. Approval changes with interest. Praise often follows results and disappears during decline. Do not build your discipline on reactions other people can withdraw. But do not replace the need to be loved with the need to be feared. That is the same dependency wearing armor. The real objective is neither love nor fear. It is self-command. The ability to act without needing either reaction. Reality first, evidence second, reputation third, narrative fourth. You do not control the narrative by arguing with every false opinion. You control it by creating a pattern so stable that the old story can no longer explain the evidence. This is the conflict between virtue and fortune. Machiavelli wrote, "Fortune is the arbiter of one half of our actions, but the other half remains open to human direction." You cannot control who supports you. You cannot control the family into which you were born. You cannot control every rejection, economic shift, employer, algorithm, or opportunity. That is fortune. But you can control whether intention becomes skill, whether skill becomes proof, whether proof becomes reputation, whether reputation becomes leverage, whether leverage becomes sovereignty. That is virtue. The weak man tries to control opinion because he has not learned to control output. The strategic man controls output and allows opinion to become a secondary consequence. Explanation is useful when it coordinates action. It becomes weakness when it asks for emotional authorization. You are not becoming secretive, you are becoming self-directed. Stop presenting your future as a proposal. Build the skill. Record the proof. Let repetition change the room. But proof alone is not a complete operating system. The next question is what you should build first when you have no support, no network, and no margin for wasted years. In the comments, name the one thing you will stop explaining and the first measurable output you will produce within the next 7 days. Then watch. If I started from nothing, I would build this system first. Stop presenting your future for approval. Build until the explanation becomes unnecessary.